We have Queen Star. Is that Cloud
Oh,
fans?
hello
That
everyone.
that is
So,
Pinkster. Hello.
it's our honor to announce that we are starting our new show called uh, DeSo Talk Show, hosted by Kanshi. He will be assembling some cool devs almost every week to talk about the important stuff going on DeSo. And today we have very cool guests like Jason Devlin and Paul Burke joining us today. So, Kanshi.
Thank you very much, Alex. We're doing it in the formula of Cloud Forum, so it's an open meeting. We're inviting guests here on Zoom. Today we have a bunch of node operators, so we're gonna talk a little bit techie today. Welcome everybody. While we're waiting for the new core node to come anytime soon, we're waiting also for the support from the DeSo Foundation to builders, artists, and creators at large. Let's talk a little bit about DeSo. Now, welcome Paul, welcome Jason. Great to have you guys. Paul, if you could give us like a quick shout out about yourself, introduce yourself to the public.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Paul Burke. I am a Android developer by trade. Been developing for a long time, since the beginning of Android pretty much. Been crypto curious since 2017, mostly into Bitcoin, Ethereum, wrote a couple of smart contracts. Joined BitClout on the 19th of March, so I've been here since early, and probably most known on the platform for building and maintaining the BitClout Plus plugin, which is a browser extension for Chrome and Brave and Chromium browsers that enhances your experience on bitclout.com.
A browser extension that we all love and recommend. I would just add. Thank you very much for this short intro, Jason. If you could add a few words about
Sure,
yourself.
sure. Yeah, I've been using that extension since like the first day it came out. Like, love that thing, man. So I'm Jason Devlin, based out of Miami. Been in doing tech product stuff for a while, kind of the Miami tech scene. Yeah, I think I joined March timeframe. Me and a couple of guys that I work with, built CloutCast, which is it's a kind of promoted post engine for DeSo. So able to promote any post, make anything go viral, have specific people post things like that. We actually got the idea from the BitClout white paper itself. So yeah, I mean that's us. So we've been here for a while, keep iterating, and here to talk about dev stuff.
Sounds great. Yeah, and also a tool we all love and appreciate having in the ecosystem. Guys, we know, I guess, each other, but let me just also introduce briefly myself. I'm Kanshi. I'm a doctor of engineering and technology. I'm a software architect by job, or developer. I do a lot of development. Right now, I'm building up the community of software makers Love for Source, where we're trying to grow the ecosystem into more of a decentralized social environment. And I also build a virtual world, but because I'm strongly convinced that the VR and AR is something that is coming to us very, very soon. But enough about me. Let's talk about the new node and all the new features. I guess this is the this is something that is taking a lot of steam of the conversations we're having, and I'm sure this is also very important for you guys because BitClout Plus is very strongly integrated with the current BitClout structure of the system, right? Because it works on multiple nodes. And CloutCast also, I think you guys recently started the efforts of integrating the more directly into those multiple front ends with quite a few successes. So I'm very curious, what do you guys think about this incoming new node and all the possible new features that will probably come with them, right? Paul, would you like to give it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think as a user, I'm excited, obviously. The speculation is that this new node is really the redesign that they've been talking about for a while. And perhaps a rebranding. So From what I've seen and from what I've heard, Fast Freddy has given a little bit of tidbits. He's been calling it a reskinning. So I don't know if we should expect a complete reworking from the ground up. On the technical side, we'll probably still be on Angular. Maybe they will have moved from Bootstrap to something like Tailwind. But I don't know if we should expect too much more than that, especially when you look at just how much work has been going on at the same time. Hiring an outside agency, it's difficult to have them come in and make kind of fundamental changes. More likely it's going to be kind of cosmetic. Hopefully there's some attention to UX design and not just the UI design. So yeah, as a user, I'm excited. As someone building an experience that kind of relies on the front end, I'm not really sure what to expect. I don't have any insight into what is happening on this redesign, where it's going, whether I should expect any or everything to break on the extension. As of right now, the extension is written in such a way that it will fail very quickly if it doesn't see the things that it expects to.
90% of it's going to break, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, actually the funny thing, the only thing that might continue to work is the recent NFT transfers and burns, because I actually added my own entire pages for that. So, what previously 404s are now being fulfilled by Plus. So that might be the only thing that works, and it's going to look really strange and out of place. But if they change the domain, then nothing's going to work, right? Because BitClout Plus only works with BitClout.com unless you download from source and change the website. So
unless they redirect, right? I mean, if they redirect all traffic to new, then you're screwed.
Yeah. But my take will basically just be reassess. Let's see what things are now part of front end. Over time, a lot of the things that were early in BitClout Plus have been added to front end because they were just kind of obvious low-hanging fruit things that I saw on Twitter, or things that were kind of, that I wanted to contribute to front end, but didn't have a way to in the beginning. So I assume that we're going to see more of those things come over into the new node.
I think,
redesign.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some hints about the referrals incoming, right? I think we've seen the hint about the NFTs V2 incoming. When is that going to happen is also, I think, an open question. Perhaps, I think you're right that perhaps we're reaching far into the future with this because there's so much work to be done. But I think perhaps integrating more tools like CloutCast, for example, directly into the nodes will speed up this process, right? So, or Polygram, or so, like tools that are not like full blown nodes, right? I don't know, Jason. How do you feel? How do you guys feel about the?
Yeah,
thing?
So as far as like the new node, I'm completely in line with what Paul said. It's cosmetic, right? Like we've seen the redesigns, that's been kind of socialized. I think like the user experience flows, nothing is going to be mind-boggling there, right? Like it's not going to blow our minds. It's the exact same user flows you have now. It's just prettier, right? Like they rounded the edges, they make it look like a professional website, right? Like I don't think it's going to be that drastic. It's just going to look and feel like something we can kind of be like proud of. Like when you invite your friends over and it's like, hey, like come check it out. And like today it's like BitClout.com and they're like, but wait, like, this is like that crazy thing you told me about. So I think for me as a user and as an advocate for DeSo, I will personally be happier to have like a better front door. And this is like kind of silly, but for me, like, I think it will help a lot to like female users, right? Like, because I've shown BitClout.com to my wife and all of her friends and any girl that's around. And like a lot of the guys will kind of get it. They'll make an account. I have yet to successfully onboard a woman. Like it just hasn't happened, right? So I honestly think just a nice look and feel, right? And a couple of other, key features like native video, some other things I think will go a long way. But
did you change your theme to pink or the cake theme when you were showing it? You should try that maybe.
Yeah, I'll try it. I'll see if that does it.
But I agree. You're totally right that perhaps that's one of the reasons why the female population is not so large on on BitClout. I'm curious what do you guys think about the new features, though. If this is going to be something that is going to move the needle forward. We've had like NFT transfers being available at the API level for a while, right, Paul? I guess you're the first person to make it available to the users, right? To be honest, I tested it and I think I couldn't transfer like still the NFT with embedded, like the unlockable content.
Mhm.
But I think, I mean, on overall, if you look at it, to make it, usable for the masses, this needs to be transferred into the nodes and integrated with the nodes, be it through BitClout Plus, it being integrated more directly into the interface, or CloutCast being integrated more directly into the interface. And I wanted to ask you guys, what do you guys think, or did you consider, and do you feel the need that perhaps we should start talking about some sort of technical lanes, some sort of a technical protocol for us to make it easier and more, natural to integrate external tools into the front end, like so that perhaps with this redesign we could have some sort of a conversation about stabilizing a little bit on the, on what is there that is going to keep changing and what is there that is to continue. And also in that context, I'm curious, what do you think is the role of the BitClout, of the DeSo Foundation in top of this? Because now that BitClout is becoming a separate entity, how you as tool makers for those nodes, so are you making now the tool just for BitClout, or are you also gonna have the opportunity to make the tool for the decentralized nodes of DeSo at large? What do you think?
So yeah, let me start there if you don't mind. I've obviously a lot to say on the topic, but yeah, I think one of the smartest things that they did, that Nader and team did with splitting DeSo from BitClout, is theoretically, and I would like to see this come to fruition more, BitClout and the node operators there should act and behave like just another startup in the ecosystem. Like, obviously, that's purely theoretical because they're the same team. They have all the benefits. That's where all the users are. But what I would like to see them become is just another team. Like, so in my mind, I want to think about BitClout.com or whatever, if that, all that traffic starts going to a new rebranding and it's whatever it is.com. In my mind, they're the same as GiftClout or Nacho Average or CloutFeed or Flick, right? Like, they're another entity in the ecosystem. So, you got to approach with CloutCast, we're trying to integrate into every single front end. Like, anything a user can touch, we want our inbox there, or we want to let you create promotions from there and share revenue with that, with that team. So for me, like, that's, that approach, and I think it should be that way. I think the only major hang up there is they have all the power, right? So like, if you can integrate with them, obviously you're front and center. That's premier, right? Like, I think, who was it? Cloud Vista, right? Like, just came into the search one day and was like, oh wow, like everybody sees that, right? I mean, they're controlling all the eyeballs. So, I do think we have to come up with some lanes on, community engagement to get things into the place where the most eyeballs are. Just because that's just the dynamic it is today, right? If you're trying to support the community and let projects really get to the next level, they have to be to that place where 99% of the eyeballs are. So I think that's just kind of like where we're at today versus where it should be in like a year.
Yeah, and then the curious question now arises, so how can the DeSo Foundation stimulate that, right? How can we avoid making, we as a community at large, right? How can we avoid making hasty decisions, but still move forward in that sense? We've seen the turnaround on projects that is quite fast. How do you guys think this ecosystem should be structured? If I may start the conversation here a little bit, once we've been discussing this in Love for Source between team members and at large with multiple different people, what we're thinking about doing is having those few pillars or cornerstones that are supported and play a vital role in the development ecosystem, not the traditional, let's say, crypto miners, nodes, but more like developers, tool makers, node operators, right? And let's say newcomers or the community at large, right? We need to have a healthy exchange of value between all of those groups. I'm curious, what do you guys think? How the DeSo Foundation should or could approach the topic of supporting the ecosystem in a way that is smart and mindful, and also helpful long term, right? But also effective short term, because I think this is also what everybody expects. Paul, perhaps you wanna start here.
Yeah, I think this is tough. I think I look at things a little bit differently than perhaps Jason and maybe you, Kanshi, as far as the main node. My feeling is that the main node should, for the foreseeable future, be the main destination for DeSo, and it should be the reference client for DeSo. And only the reference client if you're building something like Twitter on top of DeSo, right? Because we know you can build a lot of different platforms on a lot of different types of applications on the platform, I should say. But I think it's difficult to fund a developer ecosystem that most of the participants are building closed source, self-interested tools. I think it's difficult to encourage people that are building these nodes to contribute back to the main source. My perception is if I was to start a node at BitClout.plus and I was to put time into making enhancements, why would I contribute that back to the source? Why would I give those tools? Why would I give those features to all the other nodes? I'm directly competing against them, right? So, as we start to see nodes that come out that are hyper-focused, I think that is a differentiator there. But the question becomes, how valuable will the reference client be to nodes like an audio node or a supernova, or all these nodes that are out there that are really kind of forging their own path? What does it look like for them to contribute back? What does it look like, as more features are added that really don't interest them or don't affect them? What is their participation in that? I'm not sure.
We have Rasmus here with us today, so perhaps we can answer that question later. But sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go on.
No, it's okay. So if you look at kind of typical or the prevailing kind of models for this, you have grant programs, you have incubator programs, you have competitions, you have all these different ways that you can stimulate early developers, right? And the reason you want to do that is because often it's not easy to make money building on a platform and being super early, right? So you need to give some incentive for the developers to be here and stay here. There are a lot of great developers that have been on the platform that have built great tools that didn't have proper funding and either fell off or closed or were very, very close to shutting down. And some of those tools would have been sorely missed by the community. So there's a fine balance to walk between spreading themselves too thin as a foundation and funding everybody that wants to build on top of the platform, which is an approach that some take. Like, for example, Tronix, you could get a grant to build on Tronix or a bunch of other coins that are
it's a common practice, right?
Yeah, I mean, they'll just give you coin to build on their platform. They don't even care what you're doing. They don't care if you're contributing back to it. In some cases, it doesn't even have to be open source, but in most cases, they want it to be. So we can follow that same path. But the interesting thing here is that we have multiple parts of this platform, right? We have the core, we have the blockchain, we have the API, which kind of is the window into the blockchain. Then we have the clients. And there's not a whole lot of precedent for how you deal with building a client this way. And the only thing I can really go back to, and I go back to all the time, is the way that Google did it with Android. And it's a very similar type of situation where they built a platform that any manufacturer, anybody could adopt, and a lot of them did, like Samsung and LG and Motorola and plenty others. And what they did is one by one, they built reference client applications for all the different applications. So they built a calendar application, they built a messenger, they built a phone app, they built the home app, and they put those out there. And you could create a phone and just use those bare bones components, but it would look kind of dated. So they're just reference clients, right? But in the beginning, they were the way for anybody to bootstrap. And if you can't afford to hire a team to build a whole new phone dialer and a whole new home launcher, you can use the open source reference part. So I would love to see us move towards a more modular reference client, something that's built modularly around features, where when you're creating a node, you can choose to include these modules or exclude them. And they give you kind of this core functionality that you don't have to build your own APIs for, that you don't have to necessarily think about like creating schemas for and which indexes that you want. You can just plug in your Postgres database and decide which modules you want to use. So CloutCast would be a great example of this, right? Like if I'm starting a node and I want to use CloutCast as the promoted post engine, I should be able to just include that as one of the modules that I'm building with, and it should work with a very minimal effort on my part. So
our pull request is a front end library, man. Anybody can take it down. Go nuts.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And if we take that approach, the modular library approach, and we start building support that way into the API, I think we'll see a lot of people adopt it because there'll be less fear about directly competing against the main node. So
yeah,
and it will also make some space on the interface for other places, right? So we need some sort of I agree completely. We need some sort of a protocol there to be adopted. Jason.
Yeah. So I mean, as you mentioned, right? Like you might be on the other side of me for that, that line of thought. So I think the way I see it is there's two distinct lines of effort. There's the one that are like the tools and infrastructure, right? And I think grants are especially good at that. So that's one of the core things I'll be looking for if the dev fund is announced Tuesday or whenever that news comes out. I'm sure we'll get into this, but like how is that? Are they thinking about giving those grants out? But for instance, if you look on Solana right now, right, they have kind of the top 3 things that were like shaped up by community or whoever, and they're like, these are 3 specific solicitations that we know we are short on, right? So like if somebody has ideas around one of these 3 things, please pitch us. We want to give you money to build it. That is a really cool thing we can do from an infrastructure and tooling perspective. Of like, let's say you kind of shape that ask you just said, right? And say, hey, this should be more modular, right? We need to go this direction. We can actually solicit a grant for that, right? Put out a bounty for someone to do that cleanly and start that work. Have some people pitch or, whatever that, selection criteria is, or top 2 people can get some funding to start. And then there's another tier when you deliver, whatever. But I think that is a super powerful tool to have the community, ideally, and it's not just the DeSo Foundation in a dark room, shape up these asks and, kind of rack and stack them and say, all right, what are like top 3 or 4 things we should be allocating money towards, right? From like an infrastructure tooling perspective. And then the other half are apps, right? And products. And I think that obviously, that's more my world. I care a lot more about that. I think all of that's super interesting because it brings users. And ultimately, if nodes are getting transaction money, you need users. We need users. What powers all of this? Like, it's a thing like sales cures all, like users cures all, right? Like if we can get daily active users in through any app and then keep them from your app or other apps, like that's the whole game. Obviously, you want people making differentiated, fantastic apps like Supernova came out, and it's like, wow, dude, like, good job, guys. and like we gotta foster that. And I think that's a bit different grant system because products aren't as cut and dry of like, if it does X, Y, and Z, we'll give you money, right? This isn't like a government contract. It's more of like people creating and building and putting things out there. And It's like, all right, do you have users? Is it useful? Do people like it? Does it have ability to scale? Is it going to hit these different things that we look for in products that we fund? And I think that could be a really, really great way to get some VC money flowing again. Is, once you've been like anointed by the DeSo Foundation, even if it's like 50K, 75K, right? Like just putting these little bets on products that you think can scale, I think will give them a lot of cachet to go actually raise seed rounds. And it's like, hey, listen, like DeSo backed us for X, Y, and Z reason, and it's like an easy path to actually, building here full time.
I agree. I think what I get from what you guys are saying is that as much as we have a very interesting framework for the artists and the creators to make money, to make a living, so to speak, that we also have an interesting framework for, let's say, community operators to build their communities and start monetizing that. We're starting to get those features. What we need really is an organizational framework for developers. And also that is reaching into those technical aspects of it, in which when somebody is starting to build a tool, that person knows that they can expect that this tool is going to get some sort of exposure by being implemented following specific rules. I think those are great conclusions. And I wanted to add one more thing here, is that I think we're facing this difference of opinion between you guys, or I mean, I also have my own opinion, but I try to look at the trends, right? So what we have here, I think, are two trends. One is decentralized social, which is kind of like this additional thing that is happening, and another trend is the cryptocurrencies or the tokens that are representing and building the blockchain fabric of Web 3.0, right? And here I agree, as much as it's not necessary to build more BitClout-like applications for the sake of the blockchain perspective. If we're looking at it from the decentralized social part, I would say that we are not decentralized until we have those multiple communities that are self-governed, that have their own features and their own dynamic. And also, I think it's very important what you guys said, is that how we can transfer technical value between all of those communities. And I think here a role of some sort of a loosely considered federation of nodes, I think might be a solution where those people know each other, they talk to each other, they collaborate, right? But they are not forced to collaborate, so to speak. But then again, the DeSo Foundation provides some sort of a baseline framework how those nodes could, so to avoid arguments, or to be more politically correct, to make it easier for people to interact between each other. I think all of that is the future, and that we are all looking forward to. If you want to add something,
I think the big question becomes, the grant system. I agree with Jason. Is just an obvious thing for building the protocol, right? It's tried and true. It's an easy, great way to bring on blockchain developers and people that have experience. That seems like a no-brainer. I think the harder thing is clearly the other side of the coin is the apps. At the very top, how do you decide who gets funding, right? Like right now, Natter is going to be the only member of the foundation, and we have to assume that's probably going to be for a while, because there are lots of other things to take care of outside of interviewing potential board members that I'm sure he's occupied with, so really just what it comes down to is the projects that Natter wants to be funded are the ones that get funded, right? So there's an issue there for me, in that we've already seen a little bit of like picking and choosing of winners. Cloud Vista was not the first to offer search for BitClout, but it was the first that was funded by Balaji and the insiders. Exactly. And that's why it got ushered in without any kind of resistance or community involvement. And, I think it's dangerous to set precedent like that because it not only does it discourage other developers, but it really chips away at the core of decentralization proposal. So, my strong feeling is that no project that is closed source should get any type of funding from the DeSo Foundation. I strongly believe that if you're not adding value, direct code value to the foundation, then you shouldn't get any of that money. And that doesn't necessarily mean that those apps and those experiences shouldn't be supported in some way. And I think that's why it's really cool to have things like developer competitions, to assist with marketing, to give a professional experience, to provide advisors, to do type of incubation programs, things like that. But if you're not contributing back to the source, I don't think you should get that money personally. I really don't. And I'm kind of I strongly believe in open source, and I think that that's the way that we get rid of this worry about competition, because if you have everybody contributing to the same source, you have incentive to actually build and innovate, because the innovations that you made can be experienced by users of other platforms. And you see this again, going back to Android, you see this with companies like Samsung, who develop their own APIs and capabilities, and they contribute it back to Android because they want users, even if they're not on a Samsung phone, they want users to be able to use the apps that they're building with these capabilities, right? So even if I'm using Supernova and not using BitClout.com or DeSo.com or whatever it's going to be, I might want timed auction support, right? And I want that because it helps the platform, it brings people into the platform. So it makes sense for me to share it with the community and build it in the open, because it's going to be built better, faster, more reliable, more tested, and it benefits the user base.
We're trying to do something like that with Love for Source. We're going to be hosting, or with DeSo Labs, we're going to be hosting hackathon soon, and hopefully those features. I was also thinking about like modular system, like one of the bounties for sure is going to be implemented like a fully fledged feature enabling feature, essentially, right? So that we can then later start adding new with the bounty system. So that's a quick reveal of the episode, but I agree completely. The question is, how do we as a community embrace it at full? Because ultimately we are now also limited with the trusted block producers, and I think that is not going away until at least the proof of stake arrives. We'll see how that goes. So I think there are multiple, or I agree with you that there are multiple sources of issues blocking developers that we definitely need to address. Jason, would you like to share us your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think out of any money that they allocate to the dev fund, the biggest bang for our buck are going to be these bounties to the existing protocol or shared tools. I talk about this all the time, anytime it comes up, but for me, one of the great examples of a thing that should be funded is
we lost you, Jason.
Hello, Jason. The Wi-Fi, the dreadful Wi-Fi issues.
It seems FBI shutted him down. He was talking.
He was going to spill some news. All right, guys, in this case, we'll wait for Jason to come back to us, and we'll move on to the next phase, which essentially I wanted to leverage this opportunity where we have you, Paul, and Jason, not sure if you hear us, and also a bunch of node operators with us, and I wanted to see perhaps there are some discussions to be started. I don't think we can finish any of those discussions right now, but I would like to talk a little bit how we as a community can we empower the node and tools dynamic, and how this can be improved upon. Perhaps also giving some hints to the DeSo Foundation on the support of the nodes, and basically I wanted to give some space for the node operators to share some thoughts and join join the conversation since it's on topic. We have quite a lot of them with us today. So guys, feel free to, if you're a node operator, you know who you are. Feel free to enable your video or not. If you don't want to, that's also fine. I don't know, Paul. Would you like to start perhaps some sort of a comment towards the?
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt just for a second. Rasmus, Wendy, Queenstar, are you going to join conversation without video? If you're going to do it this way, it's okay. Just let us know, so we'll unmute you.
Welcome back, Jason. Just to keep you in the loop, we're just starting to get the node operators join the conversation. We're gonna start with Paul, and then you perhaps some opening comments. I'm curious, how can we empower the node and tools dynamic? You know, like how can we make it work for everybody? You know, and perhaps some comments regarding the what the node operators were looking toward to from the DeSo Foundation and that kind of stuff. Paul, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think this is the most tricky thing. You know, to be clear, I believe that to achieve decentralization, we need a proliferation of nodes. Like we need nodes, we need people creating these nodes, and it's a great thing for the platform. I'm skeptical on whether it's the best thing for the platform early on, just while we are struggling to attract people onto the platform. Not having a centralized brand and destination, I think, could be splintering and difficult. But one of the things I think on the most basic level that the foundation could do, and that they're already starting to do, is help foot the bills, help foot the cost for actual hosting. Right now, hosting, it's actually pretty expensive just to host a node, and to do so reliably. If you want to have replication so that you can support people all over the world, and it's going to be more cost prohibitive as time goes on. That databases grow, and this stuff is expensive. So simply having a system where you could apply to get funding just to run a node, or to maybe use some of their shared machines, I think that would go a long way. And right now they are providing the image hosting and soon to be video hosting. I think that's the right idea. I would prefer if they would instead, fully embrace something like IPFS and run their own pinning service and just, foot the bill for the pinning. But it's the right idea, right? Like instead of having to putting the burden on the node operators, give them an opportunity to iterate and to build without having to, have this huge capital upfront to actually pay for the hosting and running of the nodes. So that, I think, on the most basic level, that type of support seems like something that could only be a net positive, and it is pretty hard to abuse. Like if they see that you're abusing the hosting, they can just turn you off. So I don't have all the answers, but that's something that I think I would like to see in a way that they could very simply support at least the bootstrapping of new nodes.
Yeah, you see this as a most pressing or blocking issue from people. Yeah, I would confirm. Even with us trying to make it simpler and cheaper, and then later supporting with DeSo Labs, it's still a burden because of the development cost and all that stuff. Definitely. Jason, would you like to add something before we move on to the node operators?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Catch me up. What's the main question here?
The question is, how do we empower the node tools dynamic, and how do we or what should be the role of the DeSo Foundation in supporting the nodes?
Yeah.
And one question for me as well before we jump into the node operators and node owners. Could you tell your idea about the fund, how it should be functioning, if there will be one?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, so one thing I kind of wanted to mention in general was, I mean, let's be clear about this. The first dev fund, whatever this is occurring without any community input, right? I mean, it's probably going to come out Tuesday, right? So from the town hall, he mentioned that it was going to be coming out the following week. Didn't happen. Yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be rolled out this Tuesday. Zero community involvement, right? I mean, aside from maybe they saw messages, maybe they listened to a BitClout Pulse stage, but whatever is going to come out is going to come out, right? Like, so they kind of just unilaterally came up with whatever they're going to put out. So it seems like, you know, where we're at right now is we're not going to be able to affect the first version of it. That's for sure set in stone, right? So like whatever comes out is going to come out, and then it will be on the community to try to get ideas shaped, formulated, and actually to the DeSo foundation, which is just natter right now, to try to get any iterations into this. So I wanted to like just frame it, right? So it's like from a community perspective, there's really only so much sway we have right now. I think the important thing is to have conversations like this and talk about what do we want to see, so that when we start seeing things go off the rails or do things that the community is completely against, you know, we kind of already have, you know, somewhat thought out alternatives to present. So I mean, that being said, hosting is so obvious, like, you know, like Paul's mentioning. I mean, so many projects, you know, especially like data intensive projects, like hosting's not free, right? I mean, I don't know what it costs to run Prosper Clout, but like, dude, that thing is like wicked fast, super useful, pulling data from a bunch of different sources. And he's just like, you know, doing that thing pro bono, for instance. So, you know, I think there should be some kind of metrics around who gets help with hosting and how to opt in for that. And to Paul's point, pretty easy to cut people off if people are abusing it, right? It's like your run rate isn't, you know, you're not spending 10 grand a month on hosting. So I think it'd be pretty easy to cut people off.
We had a good question about the hosting from the YouTube chat. What is how expensive it is to run a node? It depends. The baseline cost like should be enclosed in, let's say, $200 per month, but it depends. It depends on the setup. It depends on what people do. Guys, thank you very much for comments.
It's also super confusing that we say node interchangeably with apps, because obviously to spin up a node, like, yeah, I mean, doesn't cost that much, but when you're hosting an actual production app with production usage,
that's another node, yeah, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like that's where a lot of the hosting comes from.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we have we are nicely moving our conversation towards the nodes. We have quite a few node operators with us. On video, we have Nordian and Randhir, but without the video, so I guess maybe we're not visible on YouTube. But we have also Rasmus from Supernovas with us. We have Clay, Wendy, and Nirvana from Natural Average, and we have Queenstar from Pinkstar. So we have quite a few representatives from the node operators, and also a few community leaders, let's say, with us. Guys, I'm curious. What is your take on this conversation? What are your thoughts? And let's start with Nordian. Nordian, would you like to unmute yourself and share some thoughts?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for the invitation. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank Paul, you, Kanshi, the DeSo Labs. I think it's amazing what so many people is doing. And I always like to take these opportunities to be grateful about that. By the way, correct me if I'm wrong. Happy birthday, Alex. I think it's your birthday today.
Birthday, Alex.
Yeah, look, man, I think this is a huge conversation. Love it, Kanshi. This is obviously a huge conversation, so I would like to get to the point. I'm trying to run the first Spanish-speaking node. My intention is that for 3 years, more or less, I have been really interested to give to my community a place where they can develop in any way, respecting our culture, etc. I don't want to enter here an ideology problem, but what I'm trying to say, when you talk about curation, it's obvious to say that it's impossible that a single platform represents globally everyone. That's simply not possible. So that's, let's say, my vision and what I would like to achieve. And of course, hopefully inspire more Spanish-speaking people to like create apps or even other nodes and growth together. And hopefully to contribute in the DeSo ecosystem. That would be amazing. So having said that, there are so many things to talk about, the time questions, what happened in town hall, I mean, so many things. But I have basically 3 points that I'm worried or curious about. The first one is communication. I think one of the first things we need to achieve to become more efficient with the core team and us is the communication aspect. And I would like to clarify about something here. I don't want to sound that I'm not patient. I have been here since March 23, it's almost 7 months. I do understand how complicated it must be from Nader and the team coping with everything, stakeholders, launching, the technical problems, meaning must be a nightmare. But if we are serious about going with decentralization, global scaling, etc., we need to start making the first steps, even though if they are very basic, towards that. And one of the first one, in my opinion, is communication. So what I mean with communication is Town Hall was amazing. The fact that Nader came out, it's amazing as well. But I kind of feel lost. I want to be honest on that as a node operator to say, what is the roadmap? What is the strategy? Where are we going? And it could be that maybe the idea he has or the team has, I don't agree with, and that's fine. I mean, that's why in a project like this, you can hard fork or move in another way. That's fair enough. But to not know 100% clearly where we are going or the idea, what is the idea? And I'm not talking about what it says in the DeSo documents. I'm talking about more concrete stuff. It is complicated because after 7 months expending time, money, but more importantly, time, it's challenging to think, okay, why am I doing this? Why, should I continue? And we have precedents, like, for example, the mining thing that I at least pay attention. And don't get me wrong, I think it's sometimes you need to take difficult decisions, and then that's okay. But when that happens, a lot of people invest time and money to do that they have promoted themselves. So why that wouldn't happen also with the nodes, for example? Maybe in 1 month's time, it is decided that nodes are not important and decentralization is not important, which is okay, meaning if they decide that. But I think at this stage, we need to know a little bit better. So my proposal on this, to be proactive, is I would like to see like a frequent type of meeting with dev and node operators with the core team. I'm not talking about directly with Nader. I understand he's involved in too many things, but someone should represent him and have the possibility to talk directly, express our opinion, problems, proposals, whatever it is, but in a frequent way, that it's written in a place, we have a minute, we have something that is start to work like a team or a machine, and that we really contribute as a community. So that will be my main topic.
I think it's very, no worries, you're good, man. I think it's very interesting because it shows like, so the core team has a narrative, right? And we as a community, we want to start creating additional narratives, our own narratives that are possibly divergent, but it's hard to keep in sync if the other or the main narrative that is happening is basically brought to us as a surprise. We need some sort of a timeline. By the way, we have Cyrus with us, representing BitClout. And thank you very much for joining. And I wanted to jump now to Randhir. Perhaps you wanna hello Randhir, if you'd like to unmute yourself and share us your opinion. You're not gonna unmute. Oh, you cannot, maybe. No? Let me, okay, I asked you to unmute.
Yeah, right, sorry, perfect. I was not able to do so. Thanks.
No worries, sorry.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can hear you, perfect.
Awesome. No, I agree with Rasmus 100%, right? So I think the roadmap is a huge challenge. I think not having visibility to it, not having information on what's coming up, I think that's definitely a huge challenge. I think all of us have gone through enough issues, working on something and then the entire node breaking and trying to fix it, and us spending more time fixing issues than actually, focusing on development, right? So that's definitely a huge challenge. So I think it's kind of off topic from the dev fund thing that we were going to talk about, but if Nader or anyone from the core team is listening, I think that's definitely important to address. Maybe nominate someone from their team to just come and have a chat with us like this, right? Once a week, once in 2 weeks, but just have a chat with us and at least talk about the big features. I would say this is important for us to kind of put it out together as a team, because each of us are affected by it. I think we just need to put that out for sure. Going back to the dev fund, I agree with what Paul and Jason were kind of hinting towards. Covering the cost would definitely help, because all of us are kind of, taking a chance here, to be honest, right? So we all know that while this could be the big break, and this could be the big, Twitter replacement or YouTube replacement or whatever, this could be the bonanza we are all looking for. We know there's a good chance that it might all go to waste, right? So in that sense, we are taking a chance. So if the dev fund can at least cover the cost, say for the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and then set up some metrics, right? Set up some metrics and say, you need to generate so much traffic, you need to create so many transactions, you need to, do so much work, bring on so many more users. So whatever those metrics are, define that and say, so we will cover you for the next whatever months. I think it'll at least give us some cushion to kind of focus on, building our team, building our focus and stuff. And I think some of the things that today Kanshi and the Love for Source and the Cloud for Source and all those teams are doing with those limited resources coming from their community, I think that's really what needs to be accelerated. If it can be accelerated to maybe funding it 10x, 20x, 100x, I think in effect that will kind of help all of us, because we are all building apps, building solutions to eventually grow the network. While I agree with what Paul said about eventually the DeSo fund should fund the more open source projects, I think in the end, I think we should also realize that I think some of these features, for example, I'll just give you a simple example, right? So we are building a kind of the Upwork for the DeSo, kind of building the Upwork on the DeSo foundation. So one of the core features that we would eventually integrate back into the core in effect is features like what category does a user belong to? Is he a musician? Is he a photographer? Is he a designer? Is he an artist? It's a pretty simple attribute, which is very, very important if you think of it for content curation, which is probably the biggest problem in BitClout today, because you're kind of getting content which you're not kind of getting relevant content. So we'll actually be able to deliver that as soon as we kind of are able to integrate back into core. But at this time, we have not prioritized integrating back into core because we don't have enough users on our team, right? So even if we kind of try to put it back, it doesn't make sense. But in effect, we have it in our roadmap to integrate back into core. So I wouldn't say that being fully open source shouldn't be a huge criteria. I think I would say more from uniqueness of the solution, because in effect, the more diverse the solutions you bring into this platform, right? So if you bring in 20 different NFT marketplaces, I don't think it adds as much value as bringing in maybe a YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter, or Facebook, a Medium, right? All of them are there today. If you think of a CloudPub, or you think of there's Bitcast, or there's enough applications in place. But if you can get that diversity into this marketplace, into this platform, that's really what will take this to the next level. I think that's probably my kind of second point. But I think the third major thing I feel is instead of obviously covering the core is important, covering the core cost is important. Beyond that, I would say I have a lot of team members, or I would say team members, right? I actually have because we actually run creators. So we actually have a database of good developers in place who probably at this time want to contribute part-time. But over time, we can actually get them to contribute full-time to the BitClout and the DeSo sort of platform, right? But how do we get them to do that? We need to incentivize them. It could be, incentives for PR submitted. It could be, incentives for, a code that's submitted, whatever, right? So I think we need to incentivize that. And maybe, in effect, incentivize some of the apps, because we can then say, okay, there's a dev fund of, say, 10K. We can use that to maybe get 200 hours of work from people. I mean, I'm based in India, so we can actually get a lot of work out from people. So in effect, if we get those funds, we can actually bring more developers into the community. And to me, at this stage, bringing more developers into the community is probably much, much more important than bringing more artists into the community, because the artists are coming in and then kind of zoning out because of the UX and the experience and all of that.
And they're saying they don't have the tools, right?
Correct, right? So I think that's really where I feel incentivizing and pushing for more developers coming in. And because you can't really get developers without a product manager and a product team and a project manager kind of helping them decide what to do, I think whatever the dev fund can do to bring in maybe another 100, 200, 300 devs every month, I think that's going to be the key to the success of this platform. I think that's 2 or 3 things I wanted to say.
Yeah, 200, 300 developers per month, that'll be great. I think that's a good goal. I wanted to emphasize one thing that you said, that I think perhaps the role of the DeSo Foundation would be to highlight those different milestones that each of the projects or the developer projects could aspire to, providing let's say some sort of reward while that milestone is being reached, right? While also with those milestones guiding which is the direction in which the foundation would want those specific classes or groups of applications to succeed. Thank you very much for this for this opinion. Rasmus, would you like to share with us your thoughts and comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks a lot for having me. My name is Rasmus. I'm the founder of Supernovas, the social NFT marketplace. And if we think about the dev fund, I think we should start off by cloning Kanshi 100 times to contribute back to the community. That's a good starting point. But on a more serious note, I think this is a super important topic, and I think they need to start off with having a super rigorous investment process, because I don't know what's the plan for the dev fund in general. Are they equity investments, or are they more of a grant style, which I suppose? But I think there needs to be like a clear way on what's the criteria for getting the grant. What are the sort of contributing factors on making a project successful in this regard. So basically running this whole foundation operation as a VC, like a deal pipeline. So really putting efforts into doing the due diligence of the team, their product, business model, and sort of how well they're executing. I think that's super important. Also, in terms of like how the funds are distributed, this is also important, because I feel like if the funds are just being transferred to a node or an app in like 100% in one time, I think that also creates a bit of a false incentives, or could create where the nodes sort of like run with the money and without any accountability necessarily. So I think this kind of setting up this incentive structure in terms of how the capital is deployed, because ultimately the goal is to deploy this fund's capital in a way that it makes DeSo successful and the nodes therein also. So I think this is a super important factor in all of this. And yep, go on.
I just wanted to add here that I really like this idea. When we also played with some solutions here. Perhaps one of the solutions would be to on one side, because we see how well this relationship between the tool makers and the node can work with the BitClout.com being the central node, right? Because there is an incentive, really, because those tool makers have an incentive of building the tool for that node, right? So if we can provide the distributed community of the nodes a similar incentive, in a sense, we as DeSo Labs or some other DeSo Foundation thing says, listen, node operator, here is the amount of clout, let's say, that we can provide to a developer of your choice to develop a specific bounty. You choose, like you decide. Here are some criteria to match, right? I think this is a very that might be an interesting take on it, right? By providing this, because ultimately we're facing a situation in which the social fabric is centered around those nodes, right? We do need those tools to be integrated in one place, right? We need to have the trends, the betting, the promotion, all the additional things we need to have in one user interface for the user, right? That's the benefit that the social networks provide. But yeah, I think it's a good point. Sorry, Rasmus, if you wanna continue.
No, exactly. Completely agree. And I this also ties a bit into the discussion about open sourced and closed sourced nodes. And I think it's a very nuanced discussion because like we have been thinking about this a lot at Supernovas as well. And this, if we start off with every node being completely closed source and not contributing any code back to the sort of core and to the wider ecosystem, that's one end of the spectrum. Obviously, the nodes contribute other ways as well. So they basically build these beautiful experiences for different niches, perhaps, and with that they grow the community and essentially getting more transactions into the chain and thereby making everyone better off. So there are obviously like other ways than code in contributing there. But obviously this open sourcing is an interesting idea, and it goes very well to the ethos of the whole crypto as an industry. But it's a tough one because it creates these game theoretic dynamics that might be difficult, where if some node is fully closed source and some are open sourced, if you are in this difficult situation where you are not necessarily acting in your own interest if you make everything open sourced and someone else doesn't. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. And but also these can be incentivized as well. So basically, as you said, Kanshi, that if someone is contributing to the core with a great feature, they could be rewarded for it, for example, and by making it available. But maybe that's about that. I mean, also other things that I consider super important is this, like having a great like developer support and documentation in place. I think this is super important to get really the building going, and also we touched upon the subject of communication between the core devs and the nodes. I think there's I think we can do more there, and I'm sure Nodder and everyone else is already thinking about this. But to really keep the nodes up to date of what's going on, what's about to happen, and then sort of having this kind of a not necessarily a dialogue. We don't need to be full democracy here, but at the same time, like keeping informed and having a great sense of where we are going in order to then like draft the nodes roadmaps individually also. So I think that's
I would definitely appreciate to know when my week is gonna go off, because we need to update the nodes, because there was a breaking change, definitely. Yeah. Thank you very much for your thoughts, for your opinion. I see Nordian is raising your hand, but there was a back channel conversation between me and Cyrus happening, so please let me give him the voice now, and we'll slowly migrate towards an open discussion soon. But yeah, Cyrus, I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself. Feel free to.
Hey man, thank you. I wanted to just add on to a couple of things. I completely agree that the core team and the foundation should be doing a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with all of us. It's really important to have that communication, that visibility with the roadmap, but also them being able to get a pulse of what we need and what's going on the ground, so they can best give us the resources. I also agree that the criteria should be pretty laid out on DeSo.org. Couple reasons we've seen, like you said, with Cloud Vista, different players getting priority. But if you put all the criteria out there, it's an open playing field. Everyone has equal opportunity to meet those criteria. I think it would be very empowering to the dev community. So I hope they absolutely do that. And, I'm listening to you guys talk, and it's one of those things where, I agree. The first round with the DeSo Foundation is probably going to be very centralized, no criteria, just one or two dudes picking where the money goes. So I think in the meantime, while we're pushing to get that closer to where we want, we should also collectively be pushing DeSo Labs. Because I think community overwhelmingly, they would be willing to chip in, and you could crowdfund at a larger source than, I'm saying, like, still go for the DeSo Foundation, but there's a lot we can do on the community level.
100% agree. This month, the payouts that we did, well, not the payouts, the DeSo transfers that we did this month were higher than the reference code of running the node, right? So it looks like the community can support itself even in this case. Of course, again, I would just emphasize developer cost. Like to build on top of that is more expensive.
And there was like 30% less nodes allocated funds out this month compared to last month. So it shows that on a community level, DeSo Labs is putting criterias. They're narrowing in on exactly what nodes get those funding. The amount of funding has gone up. At this moment, it covers the hard costs. So it's not hard to fathom that maybe we're 30, 45 days away. We ramp up our collective push on DeSo Labs, and all of a sudden now we have some funding for features, right? So I think we should equally push that route while we're equally pushing the DeSo Foundation route. And I think by the end of the year, we're going to have a good solution on that. And that's all I wanted to share for right now. Thank you.
Just adding 2 cents. Thank you. Great points. We did manage to accumulate. I'm not sure if the DeSo Labs, the community version of it you were talking about, or the core teams version of it, but we did manage to accumulate the funds from the community enough to run a hackathon, right? I mean, it's not a big one. We have 11 clouds, so it's not that much, but I think that should be enough for us to be able to put in place the first features, as I said, for example, enabling feature, which is strongly desired by the community and will act to drive that forward. Guys, we have more node operators with us. We have Wendy, Clay and Clay. Would you guys want to unmute yourself and join the conversation, voice your opinion, perhaps? Or we have also. All right, I cannot speak right now. Busy. Guys, feel free. I think I'm gonna turn on the open mic right now. So feel free. I think it is open mic already. So you should be able to unmute yourself.
Well, I want to add one more thing. This whole thing about open source projects versus non-open source and open source nodes versus non-open source. It costs money to build out these bigger features, right? So if any one of us is spending thousands of dollars to get something done, and then you just open it up and say, hey, I put all the money in, here you go, whole DeSo community, that it's kind of like one-sided, right? I agree with there being incentives from the DeSo Foundation, any nodes or projects that can offer up a functionality that really does something great, then they would comp us with X value. That way, all devs are pushing forward to make features and then open source it. That makes a lot of sense. But I think in today, for any one of us to spend all the money, get the project task, get the dev, build it out, all that, then just release it for free, it's a very novel, selfless act. But I don't think a lot of companies or individuals are going to go for that until there's a sense of,
Especially since, at least right now, those features are very strongly used to differentiate, right? So the nodes will develop those features that are unique to them in some way. But Nordian, you wanted to add something from yourself?
Yeah, a couple of points. First one is related to what was said before about the Dev Foundation, and I think was Paul that mentioned the fact that probably the model should be like whoever can contribute with code, etc., should be the one getting funds, which I understand and agree. I would like just to add the fact that I think Nader have said several times the fact that the key here is a transaction model. like if we understand we are in the DeSo ecosystem, and even if in the future are thousands of nodes, we all are going to be doing transactions on the DeSo protocol. The key of the game here is transactions. So I think that your capacity as a node to create transaction should count as well. Because it's not only, of course, to develop things will contribute to have more transactions, because hopefully will bring more people to the platform, but could be also building a community that achieve that. So if we create more transactions, means theoretically that the price, for example, of DeSo will appreciate, and theoretically speaking, for the greater good, we are all going to benefit. So I think the transaction is a key element on all this discussion. That I just wanted to point that out. And just a quick comment about what was said about the open source part. It is a complicated thing. I totally get Paul's point, and I think it's also a matter of the ethos of the whole protocol. It's not only monetary, it's about the vision and how we feel about this. But I also understand the point of course, if I'm investing my money now and I'm, as Kanshi said, differentiating through this, how can I just give it away? So I think that's where the core team or the Dev Foundation really needs to play along, as was said, like, okay, maybe the people that will contribute in a specific way will have access to a specific fund, and then it's up to me to decide, do I want or not to enter in that thing? But ultimately, I think it's important to also make visible this, like, what is the benefit to be open source? What is the benefit? Like, if I get, for example, PR or branding, like, oh, I'm out there, I'm being sponsored, I have at least a benefit by doing that. So I think the balance of that, it's up to their hands, and not only the monetary part. I don't know if I explained myself, but I just wanted to.
I think I agree with you. I'm not sure if I wouldn't go one step further in saying that we need an ecosystem in which the nodes can self-sufficiently compete between each other, but that includes also BitClout.com. So I think here the role of DeSo Foundation I see a little bit in leveling the field, or leveling the playing ground with the main BitClout.com node in somehow. But yeah, thank you for your comments. Rasmus, yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I agree with this point of being self-sufficient, and so nodes need to be in the future like self-sustaining with their business models. And in terms of if you assume that everything would be open sourced, I think that would be in so many aspects super great, because then people can just use this modular approach and plug in what they need. But at the same time, the competition will happen somehow. So if it's not happening on the feature level, it is going to happen, let's say, with pricing or with just distribution. So if you raise 200 million of capital and put all in distribution, you become a successful node, because every feature is sort of for you to take. So I think the right approach here, like how can we move towards like a solution in this, would be to the core team to set some principles behind these different aspects, and sort of steer the action with the structure that they set place. So I think that would be great to see.
I think another point here is not only the code being open, but also what is the license on which it is being open. So that's one thing. And the second thing is the code auditability, right? So even if the code would not be visible for the community at large, perhaps it would be auditable for selected individuals. I'm not sure, Paul, what do you think about all of this, like after hearing so many opinions on the topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the touch on the ethos part is a big part. For me, the reason that I'm involved with blockchain is because of the open source ethos. I can build my own Postgres database and my own social network and my own Twitter really easily. I could probably pay someone a $5 to do it for me. But what we're doing here is something very different. And the benefits of building in the open are well established. I mean, they're very well established. And I don't think transactions add much value to the network. I really don't. I mean, typically a transaction would pay fees and that would add value, but that's not the case here. The fees are so minimal that there's no real incentive for anybody to try to run a node because of the fees that they might collect. So if Gem comes out and they're putting through 10,000 transactions a day, but they're not even talking about being built on DeSo. How does that really help any of us? I don't think that contributes to the ecosystem. I don't think it contributes to the protocol. And I've been talking to some developers who are building apps on the platform who are going out of their way to kind of hide the DeSo name, hide BitClout, make it so that it's almost transparent to the user. And I think that that's ultimately a great goal, right? Because we don't need the user to know all the technical details of what they're using, but we're building a brand here, right? And people are not going to come if we don't build the brand. And if that brand is Gem or some other private company that launches and gets people to come, they're not going to come over to any other node. It's not going to benefit any of you in any way. So building in the open, not only does it benefit you because it allows you to innovate and stay competitive, but it also attracts people to come work on your project with you, right? It attracts new talent that understand the value of building in the open, that realize that if we build together, we can do a lot more than if we build alone. So, obviously, there has to be incentive for people to build in the open. There's no question. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about BitClout and DeSo. I've made a substantial amount of money from founder awards just building an extension for people using on DeSo. It's totally open. I have never charged $1 for it. I don't plan to. Anybody can do whatever they want with it. It's MIT licensed, so you can put your own name on it and release it if you want. And no, writing that code doesn't directly benefit me, but adding value to the community, which hopefully brings in more users, does benefit me and everyone else. So, I would caution just that, if we're talking about a private node that is notably contributing to the ecosystem, I definitely think they should have support. And I said that earlier, if not just hosting, but also in helping to get users there. And that's a big part of why you would build on a platform like DeSo, right? So you don't have to build the market yourself. Maybe I'm an open source kind of diehard or enthusiast or romantic. And I fully understand that there needs to be closed source technology. I'm a developer. I've built closed source my whole career. But that's, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. There's nothing stopping you from building something in your own interest, raising money and making money privately for it and not contributing it back to anything else but your pocket. That's fine. But that's not the same thing that we're building here, in my opinion.
I think those are excellent points. I would add to this, or maybe try to summarize it a little bit in a way that it's not easy to transport code from one node to another, right? So that's the first thing. And even if you, Paul, right, you're developing BitClout Plus in the open, we don't see a BitClout minus or plus happening, right? And it's such a great thing, proven business model, nobody's trying to replicate it. On the other hand, we perhaps in some cases, especially since we're starting from the same scaffolding, there is not enough of that differentiation. So some of those concerns might be perfectly valid. But of course, I think I agree with you that ultimately, in the long run, even when we see the open source projects diverging from each other, it's ultimately about the team. It's ultimately about the drive, and ultimately about the vision that people share, right? So even if we now would have, another node pop up, it's still a challenge to transfer the users. It's still a challenge to join the communities and properly interact and work with each other. And here I agree with you that promoting the same brand, promoting the same name is useful because people know it, people know how to relate to it, and they're going to be much more inclined to give it a try. But again, people are sometimes going crazy with it, I think. No?
Yeah, I think
it
it's
was
more,
too much at moments.
It's difficult because, we have not only a protocol, but we have an actual product with DeSo and BitClout. So, typically when you're building an open source, it's really just building on the protocol level. And then everybody builds on top of it. You choose open or closed based on your own personal, ideation of what will get you to where you want to get to. But if we're talking about things that will actually continue to draw people to BitClout.com or DeSo or whatever it's going to be, and to continue to build the actual platform, I think we need to recognize that you have to walk before you can run. And when we have, if we were building this network on the existing Twitter or Reddit or something like that, the idea of just breaking up into 1,000 nodes that are, completely hyper-focused about niches, like, that's amazing, right? Like, that's why we're all here. That's where we want to get to. There's no question about that. That's the goal. And I believe that, you should be able to charge for software that you write, that there's absolute value in closed source software. But it's all about incentives, right? So if we want to incentivize developers to come onto the platform, to help build this platform out to the point where it can scale to 1 billion users, and to help actually attract people, we need to give them an incentive to build in the open. And I don't expect anybody to build in the open for free. I definitely don't expect that. And I think that's why you really haven't seen all that much in the way of contributions to open source. And that's why, for me, and to touch on some of the same points that were brought up, you create this weird disparity if everybody can get the money, but only some are open and some aren't, right? So what's the incentive?
It makes it harder even to compete, like, it's not even that the incentive is not there, it's a disincentive in a sense, right? That, come on, exactly. I mean, I'm going to outrun these guys. Okay, let me try. Guys, we have an open mic. If you want to add something, feel free to unmute yourself. We're going to be wrapping up in a second. Thank you very much for a great conversation. Any closing remarks? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I just want to add one thing. I think in addition to all of the things we spoke about, I think the fact that I think each of the nodes are contributing in terms of traffic, in terms of new features, in terms of maybe better curation, right? So all of us are doing that in our own ways. Like if cloud, you take Nacho average or whatever, right? All of us are doing it in our own ways. So I think some kind of credit back. One is obviously the monetary aspect, which we spoke about, but some kind of credit back to, okay, maybe a note somewhere, maybe a link back to that node or something will definitely help all of us, in effect, spend more time on it, right? So, and I'm not just saying from a feel good perspective, but I'm also more saying from maybe even the funding aspect of it should kind of factor that in mind, that how much of the overall transactions, I'm not looking at it purely from a transaction network perspective, but I'm more saying how much of the activity is happening from a particular node. If that can be factored into any distribution of this, like say, even if out of the 200 million, we say 10 million is for this, right? So we decide on that and say that 10 million is going to get distributed by the network of traffic that each of these nodes are going to contribute. One purely by the better curation, better features, better this one. In effect, indirectly, we are helping them for all the work that they're doing on the back end from a development perspective. I think that's definitely one thing I want to add. And the second thing, which is my pet peeve on BitClout as a platform, I think the content curation has been a huge challenge for the individual nodes, because the node where it is posted on has a huge advantage. So in effect, today, BitClout.com has a huge advantage over any of the other nodes. We have to individually curate each post, but on the other hand, BitClout.com gets automatically can curate because they can grant list. I think it's a huge issue. I don't know what it takes. I think Tejan replied and said there's a technical issue to solving it. But I think whatever the technical issue, I think we need to prioritize and solve it, because only then can we fix the biggest issue, which I feel today on BitClout.com is the content curation and the user discovery. Both of those can be solved only by fixing that. I think that's something that we need to prioritize as a team and put the word out more and more. So those are the two things which I did want to talk about specifically.
Question: didn't you say didn't Nader say content curation on global was outsourced to 3 different companies? Are we talking about 2 different things here? Are you talking about
so in effect, if you so there's actually an issue with the way the global feed happens, where if you post on BitClout.com and you're one of the grant listed people, you automatically go into global, right? But if I grant list even say 100 people who are the best in the community, unless they post on Creatiers or feed.creatiers.com or giftcloud.com, they will not go into global until I manually add them. So that's a huge challenge.
I think.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm sure about that. I think Pigeon, the star developer, has confirmed it, so I'm pretty confident about that.
The thing is that I think the problem lies in the fact that we have a separated core and backend, and this was also in that conversation before, and I didn't want to, throw out the table at the same time, because we're all really talking about the integration with the BitClout backend, a backend that is built for BitClout.com. Right, not with the blockchain core, right? And so there is a lot of misconceptions happening here. I think there's a lot of work to be happening here, and I think this is a great example where, since the communication between the nodes happens on the blockchain level, we don't have communication of the global state or of the things that build the social layer of it on top of the social blockchain. There is some advantage for the for having the eyeballs, right? And again, here is a perfect example of, and I've seen multiple features like that essentially you can see that feature was specifically developed, well, not designed to be blocking everybody else, but was developed with having in mind just the core node, just the bitclout.com. There is not really that much thought, or the community nodes are like an afterthought on top of all of that when it happens, which is great. We're happy that we're included, like with the images or with the videos. This is amazing stuff. Still, I think having some sort of a timeline, as Netikit suggests on Twitch, would help a lot. If we have a roadmap, we could even suggest and be able to participate in those activities supporting the core team. I think part of it, this lack of transparency, is essentially blocking the community from not only contributing with a lot of noise and requirements, but also with a lot of code and solutions to the problems. Guys, any more closing remarks?
Just a quick, sorry, Paul. Go.
Just quickly, something that I think we've all touched on, that just to put it into plain English and give reference, again, leaning back to what Google does, they have developer advocates, people that are Googlers that are on the team. Their full-time job is just trying to help developers be successful. That's literally all they do. You can reach out to them, you can get on the call with them, they'll help you set up a meetup. They'll help you get down to the bottom of a technical issue. They'll connect you to the core developers if you need to. That's what we need, right? Like, we don't want Maybeam to be running a town hall. Like, we want her to code, right? And frankly, as someone who's a developer, I don't want to really be running town halls. Like, I want to code, I want to make, I want to create. So we need to get developer advocates. We need community managers, developer advocates, people that can open this line of communication, give some insight into the roadmap, have this kind of back and forth and help developers.
Totally agreed. I'm blessed with Joe, who's here with us, and Matreshka, but yeah, and Slava, I guess. Okay, guys, thank you very much for amazing conversation. Alex,
where do you take all of this, Kanshi? This is my first attendance, so you basically notate all of these nodes, put it on the blockchain, then outreach to the core team and Nodder. Like, what is the aftermath of this call? Can you explain for someone who's in first attendance? I
wouldn't say this is an official way, in any way, like an official thing, this call. I think we exchanged here a lot of opinions. There are some new ideas put on the table. We don't catalog them in any way whatsoever at this point. Perhaps we should. I think that's a good. I think that's a good point.
A good usage of our time. Everyone's time is valuable.
always ready for action. If you'd want to help with that, I think a good place that I'm gonna start doing that is the wiki that we have on Love4Source, where we can also have a more open community discussion. Stay tuned, I would say. I don't want to take the show because this is still a Cloud Forum profile, not Love4Source profile, but definitely.
What did you say? If you, Kanshi, you have all the rights to do anything you want to do using the space.
Thank you. But so just to summarize, Thank you very much, Alex. Cyrus, point taken. Yeah, I think there is not that much new things for me, at least, that we raised here. I was very interested in the, in the exchange of ideas and seeing how, how can we connect the, the three, as I said before, the three pillars that I see building up this thing. So like developers who are external to the nodes, who are external to the tool makers. Right? Because the tool makers need their tools to be integrated with the nodes. Developers need to be developing both for the nodes and for the tool makers, and the nodes need the features that are going to be delivered by those two actors to enable another, set of tokenomics that is going to be happening between the users and the nodes and the miners, right? Which is another thing that we need to synchronize here. Those incentives. Nordian, go ahead.
To answer, I want just to add something to the question that Cyrus has brought up. So I think the key results of today's discussion, like maybe 3 bullet points. First one is to give the vision to those who are not very technical on BitClout, to see what's happening, to understand it, and to know where the platform is going forward, taking into account the opinions of those who runs nodes and being maybe the biggest part of all community. This is the first key result, I think. The second one, I think some guys from core team watching our things too, and they can get some feedback for themselves and to hear all our speakers directly and to understand what they should maybe to meet, what requirements should they meet, and what nodes owners expecting from them. And the third one is you can share this video with the devs who are not on BitClout, but you can share it and they will see and they will grasp the basic understanding what is going on and why it can be cool. I think if you share with your friends or some colleagues from their field, it might be helpful for them to understand what is going on.
I think also here what is important is that we as a community, we are already doing a lot of those things, right? So as we noticed, and this is also a great opportunity for us to, to widen that activity, to get more involved, so I don't want this only to be the letter to the developers or the letter to the community. I want this to be a conversation that is meaningful to all of us. And all of us, we can raise our points and we can have some sort of a format to, not only to promote ourselves, because as you noticed, there was not that much promotion happening here, but rather, try to solve the problems that we're facing, or at least identify the key ones, or the ones that are important to us that are sitting on the table, while the table is open for the community to join. Nordian, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to add on this, related to my first point of the communication, I think I'm not a person that expects somebody else to do something for me. So normally what I would say now is that it would be nice if we could start our own frequent conversation like this one. I understand that it is complicated for everyone, the schedule, etc. But if we find a way to have between us a frequent conversation where we can discuss about this, have proof of evidence, where we have tangible outcomes or proposals, we will have more credibility to request from the dev team. They say, guys, we need to sit down, we need to have this conversation. So I just want to, how I see it, and maybe I'm wrong, is Law4Source, I think I have, or sorry, DeSo Labs, now it's doing a great effort on that. Probably with Cloud Forums, I don't know, in a certain way, maybe have a Discord group. We could talk about it in whatever I can support, I will. But I think it needs to come from us the first step to show, guys, we're serious about this. And now we are in position to request, we need to sit down. We deserve that conversation. So I just wanted to add.
I agree 100%. I think that's probably the one takeaway I would say. All of us need to get together and push that word out. So there are ways in which the community is already getting together to help other node operators and apps and stuff like that. I think whenever we get the next opportunity in the town hall or in any other way, either Kanshi gets invited or Paul gets invited or somebody gets invited, right? So we put the word out that there is a DeSo lab, there is a Cloud for Source, there is a thing which is already doing it, right? So it's easy for the Dev Foundation to start with that. I'm not saying they need to stick to it, but they can at least start with that and say, okay, we will match whatever the community contributes. If the community contributes 10 cloud, the DeSo Foundation contributes 10 cloud more. That's a simple way to start, and it's not a huge amount, but it is a way of, helping these people who are working with you based purely on trust and based purely on, helping this platform grow, right? So I would say that's probably the one takeaway I would want to go out. I don't know how we can get it out to the world, but maybe we just, get that message out en masse, each of us individually do it, right? And each of us have enough for each, so we all get that out, and I think that should be a good takeaway from this session.
I think also that support doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? So we should refrain perhaps from dropping 100Ks at people and rather trying to support the teams on a regular basis, like making it a sustainable growth rather than just explosive growth. Of course, we need the explosive growth. Of course, we need hype. I mean, let's be real. But we also need sustainable growth to be able to sustain. To keep that hype and that fire burning like magic. Guys, thank you very much for an amazing conversation. I'm not sure if Alex, you're still awake on your birthday again. Happy birthday! It was.
Should I sing for him? Happy birthday, Alex!
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're ready to switch off the stream whenever you are and join the party, or you getting